Afternoon, Cherries fans, and welcome to this latest show here on Up the Cherries in All Departments. 2015-2016 was our first season in the Premier League. It was a remarkable season where we managed to actually keep ourselves above the red dotted line. Before we do go through this in a little bit more detail with somebody who has even better memories of that season, here's a little bit about our sponsors, Dental on the Banks. To find out what they can do for you, visit dentalonthebanks.co.uk. Now, my special guest today is a Leicester fan. And if you mention 2015-2016 to them, they've got some good fond memories of that year. I wonder why. We'll find out more now. It's a pleasure to welcome on from Leicester Till I Die YouTube channel, Chris. Good afternoon, Chris. How are you?
I am very well, especially with the topic we're talking about today. How are you?
Yeah, very, very well. Thank you. Very well.
And thanks for having me on.
Not a problem at all. My pleasure, Chris. So today we are going to discuss the 2015-16 season, which was the Cherries' first season in the Premier League. So holds a lot of memories. However, it holds some good memories for Leicester fans as well, doesn't it?
One or two.
Yeah.
If I knew what I knew now, I would have had a bet. But yeah, it was, and I think the fact that all the attention was on us, probably, I can understand maybe some Bournemouth fans have been a little bit upset because your story was as good as, if not better, than our story. Because as you know, I live in Poole, just outside. I worked in Bournemouth at the local paper at the Echo, and where you were when I first moved down to the area, it is such an amazing story, and one that as a town and as a club, you should rightly be proud of.
Yep, we most definitely are. And to be fair, when looking back at that season, even though we did drop into the relegation zone around about November time, after that, and a really upshoot in December, of course, we beat Chelsea, we beat Man United, of course, we beat West Brom as well, and also March, so towards the end of the season as well, we didn't ever really look at being in any danger at all, did we?
No, and those wins did us a favour as well, obviously. But I mean, I remember that win against Chelsea. It was like, I don't know who we played on that day, but I think it even topped that because it was just obviously so unexpected. That's what you got to love about football. And no disrespect to Bournemouth, because I don't think of Leicester as a big club. I still think of us as a sort of smaller club. But the fact that you can have these results, that is what is so brilliant about English football.
Oh, most definitely. And when we first went into the Premier League, we just didn't know what to expect. We're a small club. We're a club with a stadium that holds 11,000. Yeah. And we got beat by Aston Villa, first game of the season. And I thought, oh, crikey, here we go. Then got beat by Liverpool away. Kind of accept that.
Yeah.
But really, the spark was that West Ham game, which we won 4-3. It was a real battle, but it showed that the players were capable of mixing it with a team that were, a decent side, really.
Yeah, and those early games, because the season before, when we'd come up, you have high hopes. You're crossing your fingers. You're thinking, "Oh God, let us finish 17th." And we'd been there sort of 10 years before that under Martin O'Neill, and every season that kicked off, it's like, yeah, we want to finish 17th. That's all we were bothered about, so we could stay in the league. We were getting 9th and 10th and winning league cups and losing league cups, and we thought we would never ever beat that. But that season, we came up. We started off with a draw. Against Everton. I think we may have lost the next game, but very early on we played Man United at the King Power, and it is one of those I was there moments. I think we had 5 shots on target, 5 goals, including the penalty. We beat them 5-3, and I ended up on some woman's lap next to me that I didn't know. That wasn't a season ticket, so it was a different one. But I mean, literally, I think it was my son that was sort of grabbing me. Otherwise, I'd have felt they'd been all over her. But it was one of those I was there moments. And then the season just went from bad to worse. That was the peak. And if we'd have gone down, that's all we would have been talking about was that Man United game. Well, we still do, in fact, whenever we can. But yeah, it was a great. Those early results, I say, that can often be misleading.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think one thing that we should bring up before we talk about that season is, of course, Leicester. Whilst we were running away with the championship, or I shouldn't say running away, but really competing at the top end, Leicester were having a bit of a torrid time, and this is a remarkable stat, really. So Leicester were bottom of the league between the 29th of November and the 11th of April 2015. And when you look at that, if a team is bottom of the league for that long, you think, well, they're done for. There's no chance. We've seen it with Norwich this season, for example.
Yeah.
It's a completely different level to the Championship, where there might be a chance you can get out because of the quality of teams. You're always going to have a Man United or a Chelsea or an Arsenal kind of come up and then ruin, even if you have got a little bit of momentum building, to ruin that. But after that point, go on, Chris, tell us what happened.
Well, just building up to that, if I can do, it was...
Yeah, of course.
We had the season before, we had walked away with the Championship. The season before that, if we're going to go even further back, we'd had the Deeney goal after the knockout missed penalty. And that kind of gave us the spurt. And the next season, we just walked away with the Championship. We were breaking records, the most away wins, the most home wins. We couldn't, basically, if we could have bent down and farted the ball into the net, it was one of those seasons. Everything went right. As I said before, I was actually sort of in the Bournemouth side behind the dugouts because I live in Poole and I couldn't get a ticket in the away end. And I love the fact that my email address is leicestertillidie.com and Bournemouth still sent me the tickets. I always wondered, did they not wonder about that? But it was great. Because I remember we had Chris Wood at the time and we'd won 1-0 to Phillips' goal and Chris Wood was walking off. And one of your fans was right down on the the gate so they can get on the pitch. And he's going like, yeah, and all this to Chris Wood. And Chris Wood just turned around, walked past him and just gave him one of those, whatever, little smiles. Brilliant. But the other thing with that is you realise, because again, Nigel Pearson, you remember, obviously he's famous for his ostrich interviews and all those. But he's a different guy off the camera. He came out, and he was sort of obviously warming down with some of the players. And he saw the fact that by then the game was over. All the fans had left. So we suddenly became very brave and had our shirts open to reveal the Leicester shirt underneath that we'd kept hidden all game. He came over and was talking away to me and my son. And then the guy came out and, right, Mr. Pearson, Sky we're ready for you. He went, look, I'm just talking. Tell him I'll be there in a minute. That was him. But we had come up on such a buzz of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we couldn't. You know, like I say, we'd literally walked away with the league, the championship, and we actually felt quite confident going into there, because when we'd been up before, we'd come up by the playoffs, and so you're always coming up a little bit late. You see, 2 or 3 weeks behind everybody else in your preparation, but we felt really, really confident, and we started off, you know, with a draw. Like I said, and then we had that Man United game, but then, if you say that Nigel Pearson is stubborn, that would be the understatement of the century. The season before, I could have told you in game week 1 what he would have played against, I don't know, Scunthorpe, whoever, in game week 32. It was the same team week in, week out. Got to the Premier League, and it was a different team each week. You know, we were never getting stuffed. There was no sort of like 5-0, 6-0, like say Norwich this season or Leeds. You know, we were losing, so either 2-1 or 1-0. Somebody would have a really good game, and he wouldn't be seen then the next game. So we'd drop him. He was getting too involved, and I was driving with my son. My son and myself both had season tickets. And like I say, it's 3.5 hour journey from here to Leicester, and 4 hours by the time you found somewhere to park. And although I was quite lucky because my sister lived just around the corner from the ground, so that was handy. But that drive home every week, you know, and you're listening to the late game, or if it wasn't us, it was dire. And then suddenly, and a lot of people attribute it to him actually finally picking Mark Albrighton, because he hadn't really played him much. And the rumours are that his missus had said something on social media about Pearson not picking Mark Albrighton. And like I say, he was, you know, he's very stubborn like that. He's Nigel Pearson, but he picked him. And then I think we'd won 4 games all season. And when we won 7 of the last 9, I mean, if you wrote that, you'd think that you wouldn't believe it. You think there was some corruption going on that, you know, Leicester had played. Because, like I say, where that form came from, I just don't know. You know, I've had to go into work in the Daily Echo every Monday morning, and there's Man United fans there and Liverpool, and they're all laughing. Oh, you lost again, and I was getting to the point where, so we're going down. We're used to it now. We've accepted it, sort of thing. Oh, those last few weeks when we were getting safer and safer, walking in here, you know, sort of thing. You know. It was staying up. They say it was the great escape ever. I mean, I'll let others decide on that. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased. We only lost to Chelsea in those last 9 games, I think it was. And, you know, I'm just looking here, you know, 20th to 18th for a week, then 17th for 2 weeks, then 16. I mean, we stayed up with a draw at Sunderland. It was staying up like that was just totally. I never thought I would feel emotions like that again. You know, I am driving round because it was away at Sunderland, and I'm driving round Paul. I've been to get my car serviced, and I was punching the roof of the car, and my son was behind me because he'd dropped me off, so he took me there, and I'm sticking my hand out the window like this to behind. It's amazing. It is I wouldn't like to do it again, but it was an amazing feeling. That was one hell of a long season, and I decided my son was going to university, so he couldn't, you know, go to the matches. I was struggling financially, so I decided that season to give him my season ticket. Good decision, that, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, it wasn't the greatest decisions, but one thing that I do want to ask you though, and if you cast your mind back and forget what happened after that, do you feel, considering that great escape, that Pearson should have stayed as manager? Because when he left the club, I thought, what's going on? I thought he's just done fantastically well to save a club who were literally staring the Championship in the face. And I thought, why is he gone?
Pearson was a great motivator. The players loved him, but his attitude is, in later seasons, the season after, he turned around to a fan and said, "Go and kill yourself." But that fan had been saying that these players should have been killed. Now, my attitude is, you say one thing to one person, you should be able to take it back. But the days we're living at the moment, the times we're living, we can't. He'd been sacked a couple of seasons before. It was this great sacking. Is he sacked? Isn't he sacked? Vichai, the chairman wanted to sack him, and his son said, "No, Dad, come on, let's stick with him. He's got us this far. We're breaking up." And literally, he was sacked and reinstated on the same day, as it happened. And then, of course, we had the Thailand incident. When we stayed up, they took the team to Thailand after that, because that's, of course, where the owners come from.
Yeah.
And there were certain youth players that went with them that ended up with some, should we say, ladies of dubious employment. And
yes.
They were videoing them, and they were using very racist language and saying I'm not going to repeat racist language. So it hit the paper, hit the press. One of them was Nigel Pearson's son.
Okay.
And the owners, quite rightly, decided they were going to sack all the players, including Pearson's son. And I think Pearson was a case of like, I'm not having that I decide who stays, who goes, and all this sort of thing. Because he's very confrontational, like I say, Nigel Pearson. Yeah. It's his way or no way. And I think it came down to, look, if they go, I go, and they sort of said, okay, thank you, goodbye.
But I think the owners.
I totally get the owners. Yeah, I totally get it because those players were totally out of order. They really were.
Of course, Claudio Ranieri come in, known as the Tinker Man, and somebody who had been at Chelsea and hadn't really achieved what they sought out to do. And then he did something remarkable with Leicester, which he could never do with Chelsea. And that was to lead the club, on what was the most remarkable journey. So, from the end of the previous season, I thought, it did go through my mind. I thought there is something special happening at Leicester. How they've pulled this out the bag from being nowhere. I imagined probably mid-table, but I never imagined what was going to happen. Do talk us through the early days of that following season, the 2015-16 season.
Well, in fairness to Claudio Ranieri, he actually got Chelsea to second, but that was the season when Arsenal were the Invincibles.
Yeah.
They didn't lose the game. So,
yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah. And I think he'd got them to a couple of finals or whatever. When it was announced that we were getting Claudio Ranieri in, and this is why I'm saying it is so important how you finish a season, because I think that really affects how you start the next season. The fact that when Watford knocked us out, when we missed the penalty, went up the other end, and it's always being shown, and got us knocked out the semi-finals of the playoffs, gave us that spur for the next season. And I think with that season, the fact that the way we'd stayed up so tight and close, and it brought us all together as a team, and I just think that was the catalyst for the start. Ranieri was a strange appointment. I was actually, and people don't never believe this, so I've actually kept the link, but I used to write for The Sun as a blogger back in the day. And I actually said what a good appointment it was. Now, I'm not claiming that I'm any great, soccer pundit or anything like that. I said, here's a man that's never won a title, a top division title anywhere he's been, but he's won cups and he's come second and third and fourth. I said, now if he gets to Leicester, if he gets us to fourth and a cup, we're going to be more than happy. So, and of course, everybody else was laughing at him and what have you. But he came in and he did ride on the back of what Nigel Pearson had created the season before. I mean, one big difference, of course, was N'Golo Kante, who we brought in, who was like 2 or 3 players in that midfield. But essentially, he only had to tinker with it, and just tweak it. Because I say that the momentum was there, the spirit was there, and he just had to add that bit of, Italian flair to the team, if you like, and I did actually go to the first game of the season and won 4-2 against Sunderland, and I watched it there and I saw Okazaki. It was his first game as well.
Yeah,
and when you look at a player and you think, bloody hell, he's going to be. I mean, he always used to get taken off in the 60th minute, and I'm not surprised he was knackered because he was like a dog after a bone. He would not let anybody rest. He did more in his 60 minutes than most players would do in 180. I mean, he was amazing. And you looked at that and you suddenly thought, hang on, this is Leicester. We've just won like 4-2 here. This is like really amazing. And the problem was we started to win games. I'll never forget match of the day because of the way it was played. We were top of the league. I remember going talking to Ranieri on match of the day, saying like, you're not even thinking of the Champions League, just the Premier League at the moment. And we all, as Leicester fans, thought, make the most of it. It isn't going to last. Let's just, we'd been top before, under Peter Taylor, but we just thought, let's just enjoy it because he says next week we won't be. But we were winning. We were conceding a lot of goals as well. There was the famous pizza quote from Claudio. They get everybody a pizza. He kept a clean sheet, and he stuck to his word. He did. But it was always, well, they'll score 2, we'll score 3, and we played Villa quite early on, and they were 2-0 up, I think it was, and we came back and we won 3-2. And it was the one where one of the security guys was seen dancing at the side of the pitch, and somebody on loan from Swansea, Nath, I can't think of the guy's name. I do apologise to him. But he was on loan, only a small guy, and he went up to head the ball, got absolutely knocked out by the Villa goalkeeper, and he didn't even know he'd scored. Again, that game, you looked at it and you thought, bloody hell, we're not giving up here. And when we looked at last season and saw the fact that we weren't getting stuffed week in, week out, and then this season we were fighting till the end. Yeah, and you maybe began to think, we ain't going to go down this season. We never thought what we'd end up with. But, it was a few games. It was kind of like, something could be happening here.
Whilst you were doing that, we, of course, was embarking on the Premier League ourselves. And, we mentioned the Villa game, mentioned the Liverpool game, both defeats. And then I guess we had a similar sort of mentality. And that's what Eddie had instilled in the Championship. We were beating teams for fun in the Championship and getting some great results. But when we come up to the Premier League, the one game that stood out for us was that 4-3 win against West Ham. And it was a real battle. It was a real battle. But we managed to win 4-3. And I started to think, we're not... Before the first 2 games, I thought, what are we in for here? Honestly, I thought Eddie's put together a team of players from the likes of Hereford, Woking, Steve Cook, who wasn't fancied by Paul Groves. Eddie brought him in. It was a bit of a team of misfits, so to speak. And I know that's not disrespectful to those players because they are legends. But you could turn around and you could say, if any Premier League side looked at the Bournemouth squad and looked down those players' names, they'd think, "Who's he? Who's he? Who's he?" But again, it was that coming together and putting those pieces together so well. And that was the similar sort of thing at Leicester, because you had N'Golo Kante, you had Riyad Mahrez, you had players
nobody
like
had ever heard of at that. When we bought him, I think it was 625,000 or something we bought him for from the French second division. Yeah,
it's crazy stuff, really. Of course, you had Jamie Vardy.
Oh, yeah, and who had nearly decided to quit a couple of seasons before because he didn't think he was going to make the grade. But our chairman put his arm around him, had a talk with him, and obviously the rest is history. But yeah, Bournemouth, you were very much like us. You had nothing to lose that first season. The fact that you had one season up was fantastic. And if you'd gone back down again, you'd have still been happy with the fact that you'd had one season in the Premier League.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, we were, we'd got, Christian Fuchs, Mark Albrighton, both free transfers. Jamie Vardy had been with us a couple of seasons, but he'd come from the Conference League. N'Golo Kante, like you say, and Mahrez, who were, cheap for what we sold them for. They were cheap purchases. We got the nickname the Band of Brothers, but that could just as easily have been applied to Bournemouth.
Yeah, most definitely. And
because you had players that, I'm not saying that players that play for Manchester City don't win, but I honestly sometimes look at those teams and think, if they've lost again, they walk off and they're thinking, well, I'll go home in me, Maserati and have a bath in champagne and what have you. But we're Bournemouth, because where you'd come from, like I say, when I came down, I can remember your guys collecting money in buckets and, with the ground. It would have been a great story had we not, unfortunately, stolen the limelight that season. It would have been a great story what Bournemouth achieved.
Well, moving on to September, so you beat Villa 3-2. Of course, September you drew against Stoke, lost against Arsenal. Now, Arsenal were the side that beat you on both occasions, but they were the only ones, weren't they?
God, I hate Arsenal. I've got to say, I probably hate Arsenal fans. Well, not all of them, obviously, not all of them. But I think the funny thing is not that first game, but the second game they'd beaten us, and unfortunately, we were drawing, and Wazleski, who was nicknamed the Tank, defended like a tank and gave a free kick away. And they got a goal, and there was the picture of them all celebrating in the changing room afterwards, like they'd won the Premier League, and that's. And he said all he had to do, he just cut that out and stuck it up on the changing room, wall, and said, "Fellas, that's what they get. They've beaten us, and that's how they celebrate," sort of thing. But yeah, it was a difficult. We lost 3 games that season. 2 of them were to Arsenal. But I think if you look and say we only lost, 3 games that season, I think there's only Arsenal who've lost none, obviously, and Man City who've lost 1 or 2 that have lost more, who have lost less than us. So, yeah. And against Stoke, we came back against Villa. We came back against Stoke. We nearly came back against Arsenal, but that was a drubbing. That was like 2-5. They beat us at our place. And they probably, in fairness, they deserved it. They were the better team.
Mm-hmm. But you went on a fantastic run after that. Just looking at Crystal Palace, West Brom, Watford, Newcastle, drew against Man United, Swansea beat 3-0 away from home, and then Chelsea and Everton. And did you at any point start to think, right, okay, this could happen, or did you think the bubbles is going to burst in a minute? It's not going to last.
We never thought we were going to win it. This is Leicester. We'll shoot ourselves in the foot at some point. And the funny thing was, as I said, I worked at the Echo, and the guy that sat next to me, or it was a Spurs fan, And so you can imagine the fun we had. But he was the same. He's like, oh, this is Spurs. We're gonna throw it away. And I'm like, this is Leicester. We're gonna throw it away. Neither of us were convinced. And no, even at that point, I mean, I'm looking at the table here. At the end of November, we were second, and we were just enjoying it for what it was. You know, the fact that we suddenly thought that, well, all right, you know, we're not going to win the Premier League, but we could actually get European football here. Not necessarily Champions League, but we might get Europa League or whatever. So, you know, that's what we know was going through our minds. It was just a case of, as I said earlier, we enjoy it, you know, and cut it out the paper and stick it on your wall when we were second and what have you. Yeah, but never dreamt it was going to happen at that point. And I mean, going on into December, I mean, we were top at Christmas, you know, number one at Christmas. I mean, you know, there's not very many. I mean, you know, Shaking Stevens managed it, but George Michael did number one at Christmas. We did, and that's. You should never ever do anything drunk on social media. And I had all my life said I hated tattoos, and I said that if we were top at Christmas, that I would have a tattoo. Never expecting Leicester to be top at Christmas. And like I say, Leicester never do what you expect them to do. Top at Christmas. And where I worked, there was on the Overton Road, there was used to be a tattoo place opposite, and I had to go and get it tattooed because it was been up on social media. It's there, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I went from sort of 58 odd years without having a tattoo to having sort of 3 in the space of 18 months.
But you'd gone from the year before being bottom at Christmas, which, let's be honest, bottom at Christmas is normally a bit of it's pretty much of a condemnation, isn't it, for a football side?
Bottom at Christmas, I think the majority, 95% or something, of teams that are bottom at Christmas go down.
Yeah.
Again, like I say, it was just that. I mean, that season, getting from that point moving forward, we were just always doing shows, radio shows and TV shows and what have you. And I was doing a lot on Talk Sport. Jason Cundy and old Andy Goldstein, the night show, the sports bar.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was saying to them, I went, I don't, you know, they get saying like, you know, I said, I'm at the point where pinching myself is becoming self-harm. Because I just can't believe it was still up there. I'm waiting for that. Here it goes, you know. And maybe Arsenal was a little bit like that. Or maybe this, you know. But I just to be top at Christmas when we'd been bottom the year before, that was a story purely on its own.
Of course, round the Christmas period was when we started to make a move as well. I believe it was the end of November where we were in the relegation zone. We were 18th. To be honest, 18th in the first season at the end of November, you know, wasn't, you know, a nightmare at that point.
It was still, you could still stay up from that point.
Yeah, definitely. I think
you hadn't been cut loose or anything at all.
Of course, we had that fantastic run in that period and managed to climb out of that relegation zone after those 3 results. But of course, you being top at Christmas, and then after in the new year, you never let down again. And there was one game, and do tell me, Chris, if you agree with me on this. The one game I fought for Leicester, and I thought they could do this, was that Man City game. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree. It was, I mean, Robert Huth was amazing in that game. It just all came together, and it was at that point that, you know, I think even sort of, you know, when he looks back, even Claudio Ranieri actually says that's maybe when he started to believe that something magical might just happen. I think they were his words. I mean, 3-1 start of February. I think from the end of January, like you say, we never dropped off the top spot.
Yeah.
And I can always remember, you could see. I mean, I was actually at school with Gary Lineker. I was in the same class as him. He doesn't, he's gone on to better things, obviously. But watching him, and I know how much Leicester means to him, and watching it, and every week on Match of the Day, you could see he was in disbelief as well. He was saying to his co-pundits, like, can this really be happening? Can we actually win it? And that was just how every Leicester City fan was. We were all there. Can we do this? It's looking. And the longer we stayed at the top, the more we thought, yeah, you know what? Who knows? It could happen. And the media were totally bought into it. I mean, I used to go to work and I had a jacket, and all it just had on was just a little one Leicester badge. So it wasn't sort of King Power anything over. And people around Bournemouth, the guy that shot down from where I worked knew me as Mr. Leicester, and I was walking into banks, and they would talking. Everyone was talking about Leicester, and you'd get home and you'd have a 3 messages saying, can you do this interview? Can you do that interview? I remember one time ringing up Lee Jobber. I don't know if you know, he's the drummer at Leicester. And I went, Lee, I said, I've been asked to do this Japanese, I think it was Japanese interview. I said, but I can't do it. I said, can you take it? Because we didn't like to say no to anybody because you didn't know what was going to happen. I said, I said, I'm free that night. That's what it was like. We were all sort of, passing interviews backwards and forwards to each other. And I was having to go and beg time off work so I could go home early to be on the Channel 5 News or whatever. It was the weirdest of weird seasons. It really was.
And then it just continued. Of course, you got beat by Arsenal after that on the 14th of February. But, it just got better and better, didn't it? And there was a run from the 5th of March to the 10th of April where you won every single game and pretty much cemented it. And when you look at that table from that season, and I'm proud of what we achieved and, how well we did. But it wasn't even a close thing how it ended. Leicester finished on 81 points, 23 wins, 12 draws, 3 defeats. Arsenal were the closest team, 20 wins, 11 draws, 7 losses. Leicester had a better goal difference. The only team that had a better goal difference than Leicester was Tottenham. But there was 10 points.
That was only 2, in fairness, but
exactly.
It was. I mean, it was great that season. The season before, that guy that used to laugh at me every morning when I walked in, I was like laughing at him because he was a Man United fan. So I got my own back. But I mean, going back to when was it? In March, the last game in March, the 19th, we were away at Palace, and the crowd, and there's a video on YouTube, but the crowd, the Leicester away fans, I think they sang for something like 16, 20 minutes non-stop. We're going to win the league. The stewards were begging them. I wasn't there, but the stewards were begging them to leave because they wanted, obviously, to lock up and everything. It was in moments like that. And then I think we was played, was it the West Brom manager? What was he called? I can't think what his name was, but he came out after the match and said that he wanted Leicester to win the league.
Yeah.
And it didn't go down too well with his own fans. But, the first thing, of course, we got was guaranteed Champions League. And it was only then that actually Claudio Ranieri actually came out publicly and said, we're going for the league now.
Yeah. And of course, Leicester didn't win it when they were playing. However, it was a draw, and I believe, was it a 2-2 draw between Tottenham and Chelsea?
The Battle of Stamford Bridge.
Yeah, you just drawn against Man United the day
did.
before, hadn't you?
If we'd beaten Man United, we would have won it then. But when they went 1-0 up, Wes Morgan somehow got his head on a cross and got us a point back. I was watching it at the George pub on the George Roundabout.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I know it.
Yeah. Everybody knows the George pub. And
anybody from Paul, isn't it?
Exactly. And I went in and there was like Man United fans were in there, and I'm like, shit, is this, is this going to be all right? And it was great. I mean, at the end, it was 1-1, and they said, like, right, go on, and I think it was Everton, whoever we'd got next, go on and win it on the next game, or what have you. And it was like, it's such a great atmosphere. And that night, I remember watching it, and I was in tears at the end. And I must admit, I'd had a bit of the old falling down water. And I was on Talk Sport that night. I was absolutely peeing out my brain on this. God knows what I said. God knows what I was saying. I was probably crying down the phone. And the amazing thing was that all the Chelsea fans wanted Ranieri to win it as well. Because they were totally they hate Spurs, obviously, but B, they have this love for Ranieri. And when we played them on the last day of the season, it was a 1-1 draw. And Roman Abramovich, they gave us the walking out between the players, sort of the guard of honor, but they'd done a special plaque for Ranieri.
Did they?
Yeah. And he got presented that. He walked out last, and the crowd. You'd have thought that Chelsea had won it.
Yeah,
fans were just applauding him, but no. That match, I mean, it all ended up with fights, and that was the famous one where the referee said that he wasn't going to send anybody off because he didn't want to get the blame for losing Spurs the title.
Yeah, and of course, those celebrations against Everton as well in that 3-1 win. Talk us a bit through that day, because let's be honest, it's something that as Bournemouth fans, we can only dream of. We've had the Championship, we've had promotions in the past, but let's be honest, there's something different when something comes together that's completely unexpected, as it was. And talk us through that day.
You are making the hairs on the back of my neck go up. Even just thinking about it again. Of course, I hadn't got a ticket because I hadn't had a season ticket, and you couldn't get a ticket. It was like the old proverbial, wooden horse poo sort of thing. You just Everton fans were selling them for like a 30-40 quid ticket for like a couple of £100. There was more Leicester fans in the Everton end than Everton fans, because they'd say, well, we don't need it, if I can get a couple of £100 out, what's it on match of the day? I was at work, and this guy was asking, and I was about to buy this ticket, and unfortunately my son couldn't come because of the university thing, and so I was only after the one ticket, and I was about to buy it off this Everton fan, and I was paying something stupid like £400. It was absolutely stupid. But everybody at work was saying, all the four fans, like, you're never going to get this again. So it's £400 for a 40 quid ticket, but, you're never, ever, ever going to live through this again. But I've got a friend at the ground, and he rang me literally just as I was about to ring this other guy back and said, I've got a ticket for you. He says, just, stick some money, because Alan Birchnell does a run around the field, around the ground every at the end of the season for charity. So just stick some money in there. And I met him, and I got the ticket, and I went in. And the thing they say about Leicester is we do know how to put on a show. Andrea Bocelli, singing Nessun Dorma in the centre of the pitch. taking his coat off and him having a Leicester shirt on with his name on the back. I mean, there was tears. I'm not, there was absolute tears, and it was And then obviously at the end, when they got presented with the trophy, I was crying again. It was just unreal. I never thought I would see that in my lifetime. And we won quite convincingly on the day. I think we lost the second. We had a second penalty, and that would have given Jamie Vardy the golden boot with Harry Kane. But he'd got his 11 and 11. He'd got that record. So it was just watching this team, Leicester, that I'd seen go into administration.
Yeah,
like yourselves. When we did it, unfortunately, we didn't get docked any points because it wasn't in play at the time. But after that, I think it's because we didn't, and we went straight back up, which is why they decided to dock points after that. But so we'd gone out of business once, and Gary Lineker had got a consortium to come and save us. We'd nearly gone out of business a second time, not long after that, but Milan Mandrić came in and bought us and saved us. They then sold it on to obviously the current owners. And when you've seen, we'd been down in league. We had never been in League One until around that time, and we dropped into the third tier for the first time. So yeah, we've done all the wet Tuesday nights at Yeovil and all this sort of thing. And just to be there, I was hugging this guy who I'd never seen before, never seen since, don't know his name. We were just hugging each other. We were both crying. And that's a sort of game. It just was, and watching them walk around. After they lifted the trophy and everything, it was. I just there aren't words to describe it. It's. I wish my son had been there with me to celebrate, but he has been at things since then. So like the FA Cup and what have you. So it wouldn't. Like I say, I can literally say I can die happy now because it was. And I remember. I think it was the night when after the game between Spurs and Chelsea. And this journalist rang me from America, and I've done a couple of things with her during the season. And she said, "Oh, do you think they'll be celebrating tonight?" I went, God, it's 11 o'clock. They're not going to be celebrating tonight. Wrong. Totally wrong. And I think it means more to a team like Leicester, who had never done it before, to win it. Like if Man City win it, and it's always good. It's always nice when your team wins it, but they must always. It's ours again. We've got it again. Add another one in the cupboard. And I think that we'd done it as a Premier League before Liverpool had done it, before Spurs had done it. We were the first new name on there since Blackburn Rovers. To win the top title, and it was just an amazing. The love, we were everybody's favourite second club until we sat Ranieri. Then it changed, but it was just, I say, I'm welling up thinking about it again. It was totally. I've got the DVD, and it's played and it's played and it's played over and over again.
But the owners had such a good relationship with the club, and it was an absolutely amazing time. Of course, sadly, a couple of seasons after, Vice did lose his life in that awful helicopter crash that was all. Well, I believe it was even on BBC Sport, wasn't it, at the time, if I remember correctly?
It was on BBC Sport, yeah.
BT Sport,
I should have been going to that game. But it was a late night game. It was like the late Saturday night, and I shared driving with my friend who, funny enough, worked at the Echo as well, and he was a Leicester fan. And neither of us could be bothered because we weren't having a particularly good season, and my phone just started to go mad after the game because I thought, we've drawn, it's there, and I'd done all the bits on the website and everything, and I sat down to have a Saturday night in, and my phone just started going mad, and it was very surreal. I mean, the owners, the owners did, and it's hard to describe it, but they didn't buy a football club. They bought into the community.
Yeah.
And that was the difference. The first thing, I mean, it was virtually the first game that this dad, because his son was ill and he had to go to America to get some specialist treatment, was cycling to all the grounds in the whatever division we were in at the time, and he'd fallen £25,000 short, but he'd still got, say, you know, it was still a great amount that he'd done. I don't think he'd actually quite got to the 100,000 or something like that. And he came out onto the pitch to take the applause, and the owners gave him a cheque for the 25,000. And we're like, did they just do that? And that's what they did. Just recently, the award ceremony, it still goes on. They gave £1 million to the local hospital for the children's ward. You'd get. The funny thing was, when we got promoted that season as champions, Top, who was Otley Vichai's son, said, if we get promoted, I'm going to buy everybody a beer. as a throwaway comment. Comment. Well, of course, we got promoted, and we had free beers before the game. And that carried on. And if you got, you know, if it was an early kickoff, and say we had to go up to Newcastle or somewhere, and you were on the coach season ticket, you get free bacon butties. And free cakes on the chairman's birthday. And, you know, I mean, we've got the clappers. You either love those or hate them. But, you know, we were in the Charity Shield against Man United, and we all got a free T-shirt. You know, we'll get free scarves. They involve the club. When they first took over, we used to be called Leicester Foss because of the Foss Road, back a long time ago. So they came in and said, look, it's a new beginning. We're thinking of changing the name to Leicester City. Now, they didn't just come in and change it. They said, how do you feel about it? And they put a poll in the match day programme for one of the matches and said, we're thinking of changing it to Leicester Foss, new beginning, etc. Let us know how you feel. And it was a resounding no. We want to stay as Leicester City. And they went, fine, that's what you want. We'll stay as Leicester City. And then you had owners like Vincent Tan that would go into Cardiff and change the colour to a red shirt. Without even asking. And that's the thing. They were, you know, you'd see them walking around at like Champions League the season after, you know, in the middle of Copenhagen, taking pictures with, you know, the, you know, with the fans. And it was unbelievable to think what had happened. And there's a lot of stories from the night, you know, Casper having to be held back and not going in the flames to try and get him out. One thing that it proved to me was we all have banter between clubs. Especially with your local rivals, you know, you guys with Southampton, us with Forest, Derby, whatever. I've never felt such warmth from the football community as we did at that time. The messages of sympathy on our Facebook group, on our Twitter, from clubs like Forest and West Ham that we'd always considered kind of, you know, we didn't like them. It was an amazing thing. It does show it is only a game. If you know, if you lose a final, if you get relegated, of course it's bad, but it's only a game at the end of the day. You know, he's got his statue now. We put the statue outside the ground. It was unbelievable. And the next game was cancelled after that. And then we went to Cardiff to play them the game after. And Damari Gray scored the only goal we won and took his shirt off. And then he got a T-shirt underneath for Vichai, rest in peace, whatever. And, of course, he got booked for taking his shirt off. But you could see the referee, you could see the look on his face like, oh, why did you do that? I've got to book you now. But yeah, the warmth we got from all of the clubs was unreal.
And that's what I think is such a remarkable story as well, is because there was that togetherness. There was that. A lot of clubs don't know even who their chairmen are, and you know, whereas Leicester fans and Vichai, you know, were so close. He was embedded in, and it was a tragic story. But everybody since has done him proud, haven't they?
Yeah, and I coined a phrase. If Colesberg did football owners,
Mhm.
and oops, they do. We've got them. We have the owners that everybody wants if they could have them. And
Yeah.
there's some good owners out there. Don't get me wrong, but then you got the Glaziers and the Cronkies and one. He went about it like I say. He didn't buy a club. He bought into the community, and
Mhm.
that's it helps obviously because we're the only club in Leicestershire. We're the only professional club, but no, it was amazing what he's done, and his son. If his son had walked away at that point, because he was vice chairman at the time, and if he'd walked away, nobody would have called him for that. We totally understood. And when there was the funeral in Thailand and everything, the players went over for that, and we were all sort of like, what will happen? And then he committed to the club. He said, "I'm going to finish what my dad started."
Mhm.
And when we won the FA Cup, I wasn't there because I couldn't get a ticket because of COVID, but I was watching it with my son.
Mhm.
And when that whistle went, I had to turn away because again I got tears in my eyes. And he
Mhm.
started talking to me, and when I turned back, he had tears in his eyes as well. And you could see, the top in the praying to his dad and the things up for his dad. And what other chairman would you have seen be dragged down onto the pitch by the goalkeeper and join in the celebrations,
Yeah.
jumping up and down? And he was hugging. He was hugging his manager.
Mm.
And he would not. I mean, if sort of the Glazers had tried that, the players would have probably strangled them. What what this is the chairman, he's a billionaire and he's there jumping up and down with the cup with unreal. And they've done them proud. Not been such a good season this season, but it's not, you're not going to have winner something every season. So we got to a European semi-final, but hopefully he was up there looking down on us and going, yeah, you've done me proud.
I've just worked something out as well, Chris. So you won the league, won the championship the first time we was in there.
Mm.
You won the Premier League the first time we was in. Of course,
Yeah.
we're back.
Well,
It couldn't happen the third time, could it?
don't you come claiming credit if we win something at the end of the season?
Well, you've got it now on record here. Now if Leicester win the Premier League it's the second time, it's because of us.
It's because of you. I'd let you share in the glory. It won't happen again. The big clubs. Like when we won it, the rumours are that some chairman was saying that's not going to happen again. And they used to have that Intercontinental Cup or whatever, where some American, and it was like a pre-season tour. And I think we played Celtic and Barcelona and somebody else, but we were playing them in Los Angeles and Stockholm, and it was weird. And there was a start. He said like, I don't want Leicester in it. Who are Leicester? They're not a big name. I don't want them in it. And fair dues to the FA. And the FA said, well, if you don't want Leicester, you're not having Man United or any of the others. So he had to let us in. We didn't do very well, unfortunately, but they do make it difficult, or they are making it difficult now. We're rich, but we're not oil money rich. But, enjoying the ride still. Enjoying the ride.
I've always dreamt of, and we now call it doing a Leicester, don't we? I've always dreamt of us doing a Leicester, but I've got to agree. I think it's been made harder by the people at the top, but it destroys football because that was a remarkable story, and by somebody you never expected to win it. You know, at the
No.
start of the season, I think, was it 5,000 to 1 or something like that?
5,000 to 1. If only I'd been a betting man.
Yeah, I'm not a betting man, to be honest.
No.
I've done accumulators and I've got close once before, but never won anything. So yeah, I'm
I
gonna.
never even thought about betting on us winning the league. I was
Mm.
never gonna
I haven't
happen.
even checked where we are. Hopefully, we're 5,000 to 1. You know, because you never know.
You never know. You never know. But it might be your turn now. The doing it. But you know, if we give hope to clubs that they can do it,
Mhm.
then that's great, because the Americans, they want to have this super league. Then they're not bothered they're not used to people winning things. they want
Yeah, yeah,
playoffs and all this, that, and the other. The
yeah.
fact that Luton Town nearly made it up to the Premier League this season, what would have been a great story.
Oh yeah.
Bournemouth. Your story, like I said, I've been down here, as I say, I lived it, and it was an amazing story, and that's what football is all about: having the dream. And occasionally, they say it was the greatest story ever told. People will make their own minds up about that. Nottingham Forest will, of course, argue the fact that theirs was better. But if we can just give teams hope that it can be done. Look at Man United this season; they've struggled. My
Yeah.
worry is that it is becoming a two-horse race at the moment with Man City and
Yeah.
Liverpool all the time. And if we're not careful, we're going to end up a bit like Scotland. And then you see UEFA trying to bring in all these new. It's going to be a hard few years, I think, for football. But you've got to keep it competitive. You've got to have the dreams.
Oh,
And like I say,
definitely.
we have won every. We are one of, I think there's 14 clubs that have won everything in the country, as in League, Cup, FA Cup, Premier League, Community Shield, and I never thought I would ever say that about my club. And it put us on the map. It's put us on the map. Even David Beckham was doing an interview, I think, that season, and he was taking a kid to. I don't know if it was one of his. I don't think it was one of his sons, but he was giving him a day out and a special treat. And he says,
Yeah.
"Who's your favourite football team?" And the little kid went, "Leicester City." This was like in America, And I would love, when it was obvious that we weren't going to be able to do it this season because our season's been a bit iffy this year. I was really hoping that West Ham would go on and do it. I want to see other teams go up.
Oh, I do, and I think it just gets a bit. It's just a bit dull, isn't it? Really, Man City, have spent their way. You could say Liverpool have done it a different way, but again, well established. They've already won it once. Newcastle have got tons of money now, so that will be interesting to see what happens there. And I think it just feels like it's being. It feels like that we can't. We're playing for a league between 8th and 20th now, and that's sad, really.
It is, but you look at Arsenal and Spurs and Man United, and all right, Spurs possibly are going to sort of maybe they've got a good manager, and if they back him, they may make it into a three-horse race. You need those teams, like I said earlier, with us to maybe struggle. But we got fifth for 2 years running. We were nearly in the Champions League both those seasons. It went down to the last game. So there are still things there to play for. There really, really is. But no, I love it when the impossible happens, and these teams come up, from the lower divisions, and they're not sort of what we call the big clubs. I loved it when Leeds came back up, because although they could be seen as a big club, their fans, not one of them I came across ever said we're back where we belong. They just said it's great to be back because of everything they'd been through as a club, and that's how it should be. That's how it should be. But whether it will ever be again or not, I don't know. But I hope it is. I hope that somebody else can enjoy what we as Leicester fans enjoyed.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll make a commitment, a bit like Gary Lineker did on Match of the Day. If Bournemouth win the Premier League next season, I'll run from Sandbanks to Dean Court in a pair of the finest Cherries boxers, and I put a horse mask on or something like that just to try and disguise myself. Although saying that, that's not how it works, is it really?
No, it's not. No. Just make sure your cherries are covered. That's all I'll say.
I don't think I've got anything to worry about.
Can I just say that Gary Lineker did make that when we were actually top, and he didn't make that say in January. Yeah, he didn't say it this early. So I'll come back to January about that.
Right, okay, there we are. I'm committed now, so I think I'll be all right. I think I'll be all right. I think I'll be all right.
Maybe if you get I don't know what top 7, you get European football.
Yeah, I'd do it for that. Yeah. I'd do it for that. Yeah, I would do it for that. You know, raise a bit of money for charity as well, wouldn't it? So can't grumble. Yeah.
Oh, we'll remind you of this. I'm just making a note of this.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Chris, and sharing the story of that remarkable season.
I could talk about that season as many times as you want to. Believe you me.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure you can. And hopefully one day we will be able to. But I think football needs to change.
Yes, it does. But it's nice to have you back.
Yeah.
I just hope you don't do a Fulham or a Watford or a Norwich, and you actually make I think you will make a good fist of it in trying to stay up. But it's nice, if only as they, from a personal point of view, that you are a 10-minute bus ride down the road for me.
Yep.
That was the saddest thing about you being relegated. But, it's nice to have you back.
Yeah, thank you so much, and it's good to be back. We're looking forward to it. I'm quietly confident we can stay above that line. I'll take 17 for this moment.
Yeah, but, and I think you will. To be honest with you, I think you will.
Who do you reckon will go down?
I've got to say Nottingham Forest, because I really do want them to go down.
After 23 years of coming back, straight back down where you belong.
Hey, we both met Mr. Dorr, haven't we?
Oh yes, Mr. Dorr. How can anybody forget him?
I know, he's the best reason for wanting them to go down. No, joking aside, obviously I do want Forest to go down because of the rivalry. I don't. I have a feeling Fulham could be in trouble because they, I don't. Because last time they were up, they actually spent a lot of money, and it didn't help them. So it's not about having a lot of money, because it's about getting the right players. My concern for you guys is the fact that that manager that was in place then with Fulham is now your manager. But you obviously, as a club, you've got you got your own, you got John Mostyn, you got people that have been there when you were up, and they knew what it took to keep you up. And I think that could be the difference for you. I think it could be Southampton. I think Southampton could be in trouble this season. They last season they had a really bad run at the end, and if they hadn't had such a good start, they would have been down last season. And I think Leeds could as well. I think Everton will turn it round, simply because of the name of the club and the fact that they have got a very rich owner again. But I think, I think Leeds could be in trouble as well. I don't think he's the manager to. I mean, he's kept them up, I know, but it's by the skin of his teeth. It was Ted Lasso style, wasn't it? That he stayed up. And so those are the teams I think will be struggling. I don't think you Metano will have the great season that you had last time you came up and mid-table, but I think you'll have enough to stay up.
Well, I hope you're right, and I'm going for Fulham in 18th. I think even though they won the championship last year, I think the way we play is a little bit more suited to the Premier League. I'm going for Southampton because of the ownership situation there, and the players. I think Ralph Hasenhüttl is a good manager, but I think it's limited. And I think bottom of the league, bottom of the pile, and I'm going to get massive abuse from them again for it, is Leeds. Because Rafinha will leave, Kelvin Phillips will leave, and I don't think Jesse Marsch. If it was Marcelo Bielsa still, I would say maybe it would be a different story. But I don't rate Jesse Marsch at the moment. I might be wrong.
I don't, to be honest with you. He had a bit of a boost when he was the New Balance manager and what have you. But I said at one point that I thought they were safe, because they were quite way ahead, and then they just went on a tremendously bad run, and it depends how those. I mean, if Leeds do a Burnley, I mean, Burnley last season finished, I think it was 17th, 16th or 17th, and they didn't learn their lessons.
No,
and they didn't make any adjustments, make any huge signings or etc. And they just carried on the same way, and it didn't work. So if Leeds go and do that, then I could see. I said Leeds, didn't I? I was hoping you were going to say Nottingham Forest as well, but I'll forgive you that.
I think they'll be.
I don't want Southampton to go down because that's another local one down here.
Do you know what? I don't. In fact, it'll be, if we stay up, it'll be a shame if they go down because we'll miss them. We'll miss them. The closest will be Brighton. We're done with, well, let's be honest, in the Championship, the closest was Reading and Bristol City, and we're done with that. So, we're quite happy to have Southampton around, but it'd be quite gutting if they went down, and
I do think, like you say, I do think they could be in trouble.
Yeah, most definitely. But thank you so much for joining me, Chris. It has been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully one day we can dream like you have.
I would love it if you could, because it is a great dream to live through. So all the best with it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on.
Not a problem at all. My pleasure. And thank you, everybody, for joining me on this special show. Please do remember to hit the like, the subscribe, and the bell button below to be alerted to any new videos we do here on the channel. Please do check out our show, whether or not the Premier League is competitive, with Gareth Withers. Also, we had John Sinclair talking about Eddie Howe. We've also had plenty of interviews from last season. We've got loads of content coming up. And also, we're going to have something very, very, very special coming up on this channel. So do remember to hit that subscribe, that bell button to be alerted as soon as that is announced. I'm envisaging, and this is only a predicted timetable, that video will go live at the start of July. I can't announce any more about that at the moment. However, that video should go live at the start of July, all things permitting. Until the next video, up the cherries, and I'll see you then.